Hey there, my fellow author. I'm Sarah Elizabeth Sawyer, an old soul kind of writer living my dream as a full-time author and authorpreneur. But I didn't start out living a confident, creative lifestyle. I struggled with the fears and the mental and emotional barriers that so often plague writers at all stages of their author career. But the truth is that with the right knowledge, tools, and training, you can overcome those barriers. I'm here to teach you how I've developed a lifestyle that's allowed me to publish 19 books and counting. Each week, as you tune into the Confident Fiction Author podcast, you'll get clarity on the steps you need to take to advance your writing career. Whether it's developing your ideal writing routine, tackling new skills like dictating your fiction, or overcoming the obstacles life throws your way, this podcast will help you live a more confident, creative lifestyle. Let's get started. Hey there, my friend, and welcome to this week's podcast episode of The Confident Fiction Author. I'm your host, Sarah Elizabeth Sawyer, and today we are talking about the art of downtime, 3 R's for the author life. I wanted to tackle this today because a confident author life is not just about confidence in your productivity, but it's also about feeling confident in your downtime, which seems harder and harder to wrap our minds around and get a hold of these days. So to do this, we are going to explore 3 R's of the author life: rest, rejuvenation, and reading. I know that many writers aren't confident in their downtime, myself included. We often tend to feel guilty for taking time off, just taking a Saturday morning off to enjoy one of those 3 R's or all 3 of them. And we just kind of get confused about how we should spend our time when we're not working, when we're not writing, when we're not marketing our books. And ultimately, it can lead to you feeling stressed instead of rested and rejuvenated after you've tried to take a day off. This is something that I try to be really conscious of because it's still something that I have the guilt about. I feel guilty when I think about taking some time off, but I'm able to get rid of that guilt by just directing my thoughts about my decision in the right direction. So I make that decision where I'm like, tomorrow is Friday. I've really put it in this week. I aim for a 4-day work week anyway, which you can go back and listen to my podcast episode on my 4-day work week if you'd like. That's episode number 5. So I'm still on that, but there are those Fridays that my week was just really disrupted. I may have had an out-of-town trip and got behind on my work, or I was sick, and so I find myself working on Fridays sometimes. But then I just have to remind myself when I get to that day that not only have I taken care of my work, maybe I've taken care of a lot of things in my personal life that would normally take up a Friday. And I'm like, I can really take that time for just some recovery from the week, from the month, from whatever project that I was intent on. And so I just give myself permission to completely take the day off. So once I've gotten past the guilt of even thinking about taking the day off, I'm past that and I make the decision that I'm taking it as a recovery day, I can just feel this sense of relief. I can feel my body and my mind and my emotions just winding down, and I'm like, wow, it sounds amazing. I'm going to just give myself the day off tomorrow. And then what happens? I start to think, if I'm taking the day off, I could get my closet cleaned out. Those shelves, I've got 2 shelves that really need to be done. They need to be reorganized. I'll have the whole day. I could just spend a little time, a few hours working on organizing those shelves. And oh, by the way, before I do that in the morning, I could crack open my computer and edit that scene in my novella, or I've got that research book that I've been needing to finish reading. I could read that. Or, my phone notes are getting really chaotic. I have a bunch of random notes in my story worlds that really need to be organized and transferred over to my Scrivener project, and so that those aren't cluttering up my phone. And oh yeah, there's those errands that I need to run. I need to go to the post office and renew my library books. And before I know it, I have 20 things on my quote day off, and it's more packed than any other day of the week. It's more packed than a work day. And that's when I have to grab a hold of myself and say, no, that day is truly for recovery. All of those other things are for another time. Those are for Saturday morning to clean out that closet, or my editing my novella really needs to go on next Tuesday. I have to fight for it. I have to fight with my mindset to protect this day of recovery that I'm committed to taking. The best way that I have found to do that is to have a plan for downtime before I go into it. Because even if I reject all of those quote things that I'm going to do, I wake up the next morning on my downtime day, and if I don't have a plan, I will end up doing all of those things, or at least trying to. And I find myself waking up the next morning more tired than when I went into my day off. So I will either end up filling it with work or with just mindless scrolling on social media or watching old TV shows on my phone, which I am going to talk about how that can be a form of rejuvenation. But the main point is, whatever I do on my day off, I want it to be intentional. I want it to be what I actually needed. I thought about it beforehand, and it becomes what I actually needed to get that recovery that I was going for when I took the time off. So let's get into this episode where I'm going to cover 3 easy to remember aspects of creative recovery so that you can live your most confident author lifestyle. And those are rest, rejuvenation, and reading. Let's get into it. Our first of the 3 R's is simply rest. And when I say rest, I'm talking about actually laying in bed, taking a nap, or taking a leisurely stroll, just in some way giving your body rest, the type of rest that it needs. It may be sitting on your back porch, it may be piddling around in your garden, but just think of it as a time of quiet rest. You're not actively engaging in any kind of project or conversations. It's an opportunity for you to just physically rest and let your body and your mind recover from its work. So let's talk about why rest benefits authors. 1, it gives our brains space to not only recover, but to explore subconscious solutions to creative problems. I have found this to be so true. I will get to the end of a week and I have a problem and it just seems insurmountable, whether it's in my novel that I'm working on, I have a plot issue, how am I going to solve this? There's just no way around this issue. And so I will make the decision to rest from that project, rest my body, give myself that recovery time. And I've done this enough times that I now have the confidence that that solution will appear the next week. I just know at this point that if I will just stop thinking about the problem, my subconscious can go to work on it and will come up with a far more amazing solution than if I had sat at my desk banging my head and trying to force a solution. I will say that works sometimes. Sometimes I do need to just sit down and think through all of the possibilities. But if I do that and I still don't have a solution, I make the decision to let it rest, and I can know with confidence that my subconscious is now going to work on it and will come up with the solution probably by the time I get back to my desk the next week. So that's a huge benefit. You're not only giving your brain cells a chance to rest and recover, it is still working subconsciously on the solutions that you need. Now, why does rest trigger guilt in many of us? So I talked about that's always my first battle. That's the first thing that I almost subconsciously skip over it now because it's not so much of an issue because I am thoroughly convinced and confident in the importance of rest for myself and I know what it will do for me. But for a long time, it did trigger guilt in me. And that may be what you deal with when you think of taking time off. You just have this sense of guilt, and it can come from how we were raised and culture and societal pressure and just our personal identity of, we're built around performance. We get things done. And I know I have listeners around the world, but this is something that we especially deal with in American culture. When I was in France doing research for my novel on the Choctaw Code Talkers of World War I, we had a fabulous British Welsh tour guide, and he would take us around to the different sites. And I think the conversation went to the French and all of the eating and the socializing that goes around eating and how they take a 2-hour lunch break and those types of things. And he said, the French live to eat. The Americans live to work. And that line stuck with me. I was like, that is so true. We live to work, especially here in America. It's about productivity. It's a culture. We're just very driven. And so the idea of taking downtime, taking time to recover from all of that work can make us feel guilty, like we're slacking on our work. And so if that's something that you have from your culture or from how you were raised, I just want to encourage you to take in the reasons and the benefits of rest and how important it is for productivity even. So it's a matter of flipping your mindset on rest. So resting isn't a lack of productivity. It's often a type of productivity. And it may actually be the fastest way to reach murky solutions, and it helps make you more effective in your next task. It's like I was saying a minute ago, whenever you take that time off, your subconscious is still working on your solution and will do a better job than you trying to force it in a state of fatigue. I grabbed this quote from Michael Hyatt in a recent email that he sent out where he said, "Rest isn't a reward for hard work. It's a requirement for ongoing success." Now, I'm going to challenge us to think about the idea of rest even deeper. So rest doesn't justify itself with better productivity tomorrow. That shouldn't be your only motivation for getting rest, because you know that it will help you be more productive, or that it will help you solve problems that were really sticking you and you couldn't get around them, and you're like, well, I will just get some rest. That way I can go at it even harder on Monday morning. I want to encourage us to think about how rest is sacred and it's a part of who we are and should be something that we embrace just as itself. As many of you know, I'm a Christian and I read the Bible every day, and anytime the idea or just the word rest comes up, I hone in on that. And I think about humans and how we do need rest. We were made for that. In our ideal lifestyle and all, rest should be a regular part of it, and it's not so that we can go out and do more. It's just how we were made to be. And so remembering that rest itself is sacred and just a part of who you are as a human being, that's something that really helps me be free from the guilt or the idea that rest is solely so I can do more work. And it helps to remember that we're not human doings, we're human beings. And so having those times where we're just being is actually how we're supposed to be. And so you can have confidence in rest. You can have true confidence that you are leaving behind the self-loathing and being confident in the freedom to rest and recover. I love this quote from Greg McKeown's book, Essentialism, where he said, "Never do more today than you can recover from by tomorrow." That's one of my life principles for 2025 and something that I find myself quoting almost every day to myself when I'm hitting that point where I need some downtime in the afternoon or in the evening, where I feel myself dragging and I still have hours left in the day and I want to be productive, but I know if I keep going, I will be too exhausted to go into tomorrow and do what I wanted to do. So that's one principle that I've written down and I just keep reminding myself of. Never do more today than you can recover from by tomorrow. And I also apply that principle to the entire week. So I never want to do more that week than I can recover from over the weekend and be ready to go back into my work on Monday. So that is rest. It's super important to me. It's something that I have firmly in my lifestyle. I take Sundays off from work, and that is my day of rest. And it is just a part of my confident author lifestyle. The second R is rejuvenation. Y'all, I'm going to be honest. This is the one that I struggle with the most of the 3 R's, but I am getting better at it. And one of the things to remember about with rejuvenation is you want to be living your own life story so that you have material to write about. I know of one author who was determined to get her writing done. She was going to stop letting life get in the way and distract her. And so she just hunkered down, canceled everything, did not see or speak to anyone hardly, so that she could just focus on writing. What she found after 2 weeks is that she had nothing to write about. Because she had basically stopped living life, she had run out of ideas, and just the lack of human interaction and conversation, her well ran dry really quickly. And so rejuvenation for us as authors is really important. I know there are extroverted authors out there, but most of us are introverts, and we tend to like to just hunker down and write or read and not get out and get that rejuvenation that we need and living our own life story, so that, quite frankly, we have something to write about. We have real emotions and experiences that can influence our stories and make them richer and help our readers to connect with them. And so what is rejuvenation exactly? Because again, this is something that I've struggled with. I've worked to identify in my own life what rejuvenation looks like. So I'm going to give you several ideas here for you to think about what rejuvenates you, and just grab a pen and paper and start jotting down either these ideas, or as other things come to your mind, write those down. What gives you energy? What energizes you? What refills your creative well? What is rejuvenating to your body, mind, and soul? So one of those can be just making room for play. And so when we're kids, this is something that just comes so naturally to play. But when we get into adulthood, we lose this too often. We lose just the ability to play. And so if you have a pet, play a silly game with your dog, or challenge your kids to a game of horse in the driveway. If you don't have a pet, don't have kids like me, plan a game night with friends and enjoy the laughter and just bring that sense of play back into your life. The next one is community or fellowship. So, like I said, we are built for connection. We are built for conversation and relationships. We were never meant to exist or create in a total vacuum, like the story of the author that she just locked herself away from the world in order to create. The opposite is true. We need to have connection and fellowship with other people, with fellow writers on a regular basis, and just be in community. We often have this with our local writing critique groups or our local writing group, or going to conferences, but this needs to also be beyond the bounds of writing. It needs to include other circles of people who are not writers, and so you don't end up just having conversations about writing. You have conversations about life, and that not only enriches you, it enriches your writing. One of the ways you can do this is starting a dinner club or a supper club, where you invite people, they invite people, and you get a group together. There will be people at the table that you don't even know, and so you're building new connections and just experiencing life the way our characters would, right? They meet strangers, they have to build relationships. So when we're out there doing it ourselves, it adds such a layer of depth and genuineness to our writing, while at the same time it's enriching our lives. Those conversations are making our lives and our lifestyles just more pleasant, and it's rejuvenating us. So if you're not familiar with the concept of dinner clubs or supper clubs, go look it up. It's getting to be popular and a way for people to just connect with each other in real life and experience that community and receive the rejuvenation from it. Another way you can approach rejuvenation is with hobbies. Now, hobbies are not frivolous. They are a part of a balanced life. They give us something to practice and enjoy that is not work or income related. My biggest issue typically whenever I get into a hobby is my brain starts thinking about how to monetize it, and I've gotten better about reining that in and just taking up hobbies for the pure enjoyment of them. For me, these are things like fluid art and drawing. I've also done cross-stitching in the past. And my favorite hobby right now is playing pickleball. I really enjoy that. I try to get out every week and go with friends and play pickleball. It is fantastic rejuvenation for my body and my mind. It's like one of my friends says, it really gets you out of your head from overthinking everything, like you are just focused on the game. And this also goes back to that element of play that I'm not great at. It really brings just that enjoyment of play, and it's a great hobby. So if you've never explored pickleball or you're not sure about it, I did do an episode, it's number 5, on 5 lessons from pickleball that can help you become a confident author. So that's a really fun one, just talking about pickleball and what it does for me as a writer. Now, along the kind of topic of hobbies and creating, remember that some people write just as a hobby, and that may be how you started out with your writing, and it may still be that case. And I want you to remember that writing can be a form of rejuvenation. Like rest, creativity is valuable in and of itself, even if no one sees it, without any monetary purpose, even without external validation. Writing for the pure pleasure and enjoyment of it can be a form of rejuvenation. So take a minute now to just remember why you started writing. Was it because writing itself was joyful? Did you feel fulfilled? Was it just pure bliss to let a story pour out of you? So think about, even if writing is your career and you have a certain word count or number of books that you need to put out to sustain your career, think about how you can go back to when writing was a hobby or just something that you did for fun. One of the ways you can do this is my technique that I developed this last year called 5-minute fiction, and that's episode number 10. If you want to go check that out, it's one of my most popular episodes, and it's a great way to just return to that heart of enjoying your fiction and creating just for the sake of creating. Let's talk about just enjoying art, like as a spectator. So the word inspiration means to draw in a breath. So ask yourself, what fills your creative lungs with fresh oxygen? Is it spending time at the library like it is for me, or just in a bookstore? I'm not there to find my next read. I'm just enjoying breathing in all of the books and the literature that has been created for the last decades and years and hundreds of years, and filling my lungs with that inspiration. It may be going to an art festival or just savoring a good meal and taking time to taste all the flavors of it. Look at how you can embrace those things and make them a regular part of your life. Now, only you can say what refills your creative well. Sometimes for me, it is vegging out on an old TV show and binge watching several episodes during my downtime. You might find some online courses that are just for fun. Like back at Christmas time, my mom found this college course on Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. And so it was like 6 hours long, and we just really enjoyed watching a few videos each night during the Christmas season. And it was refilling for me in my creative well, where it was disconnected from work. I wasn't actually like taking notes and doing this as a study. I was just enjoying it. I was enjoying it as art. And so that's something to look at, is maybe taking an online course on literature that just gives you that sense of richness around appreciating art for the sake of appreciating it. All right, so those are my thoughts on rejuvenation. Let's move in to reading. I wanted to include this because for most of us as authors, reading is not a challenge. It is already a part of our creative process, a part of our rest, a part of our recovery. But I want to talk about how we want to approach it in the right ways so that it doesn't cause imposter syndrome or intimidation or turn into work itself. So reading is a part of our work, but let's talk about it in the context of we are reading for recovery. Now, we know that reading is a huge benefit to us as authors. It's how we learn consciously and subconsciously, not only with craft books, but when we're reading in our genre, we're reading the types of novels that we write or that we want to write. But in doing that, it can trigger imposter syndrome. So you start comparing those books to what you write or your style and how successful that author is. Maybe you go on Amazon and you see how many reviews that particular novel got or has, or you go on Goodreads and check it out. And it can be that maybe you didn't like the novel, and so you're looking for negative reviews, or maybe you really liked it and so you feel hugely intimidated and you start reading the reviews and you see all of these glowing words that someone shared about this author's work, and it just feels overwhelming to you because you feel like you can never rise to that level of success. And no, I have never done any of those things. I've never compared my craft to another author's. Okay, yes, I have. That's something that I have to guard with whenever I'm reading, especially when I'm reading in my genre and I just want to relax and enjoy a good book. But it's so hard because I find myself evaluating the scene or the characters and mentally checking off what I liked or what I didn't like. And I'm comparing it to my own craft, or I'm feeling intimidated. And the feeling of imposter syndrome is coming on me because I believe I can never achieve that kind of success in my writing craft. So just as we flipped our mindset on rest, let's flip our mindset on reading. So comparison can be constructive. You can analyze why you loved a story so much and think about how you consciously want to master those same skills, or how you can rework a scene in your current novel to add some of those elements in. That can be constructive, and it's a way that you can, instead of feeling that imposter syndrome, you can turn it around and make it constructive and make your craft better. But let's challenge ourselves to think deeper about this. Imposter syndrome is rooted in a type of comparison that isn't healthy. So I want you to be conscious of that and practice celebrating the mastery and success of others without comparison, without competition. And I think that is the root of true confidence in who you are as a writer. And that's because confidence and pride are at odds. And I talked about this a bit in my inaugural episode of the podcast of what confidence is and what it's not, and talking about pride. Because unlike pride, true confidence recognizes strengths and weaknesses. It knows what it is and isn't. And truly confident creators are not afraid of failure, and they embrace rather than avoid growth. So that's where I want you to be when you're reading books for recovery, for refilling your creative well, and you feel that sense of imposter syndrome or comparison coming on, or perhaps pride in your own writing. I want you to think about how you can be constructive in that and learn from the books that you're reading and enjoying. Let it grow your confidence by being constructive. The other thing I'll say with reading in terms of recovery is don't be afraid to read outside your genre or, quote, fluffy books. Art does not have to be pretentious to have artistic merit. So read something light, read outside your genre, And just like writing, it may be time to go back to reading for enjoyment versus craft. So find those books that maybe you're not doing any kind of constructive analysis on. You are simply reading for the pleasure of reading. So you do want to, and I'm this way with historical fiction because that's my genre, I have to make sure I'm on guard with comparison and pride and all of those things. But I still love reading historical fiction, and because I have consciously articulated and put my guardrails in place, I can enjoy reading historical fiction. But I really enjoy consuming books that are outside of my genre because I can relax. I'm not doing as much analysis as I would if it was my own genre. And especially if it's just fluffy books that they do have message and depth to them. I'm getting something personal out of them, or I'm just getting entertainment. And so be sure that you have books like that in your mix that you can enjoy just for the sake of enjoying them. And so that is our third R, reading. Okay, so we have talked about why and how intentional your relaxation needs to be to build confidence. So how will you practice confident downtime this week? Maybe it will be practicing reading without comparison, or spending time at a bookstore just breathing in inspiration, or one of my favorites, taking a guilt-free day off, or even a morning off. So what will it be for you this week? I will say, if you are looking for light reading, short reading, I have my Doc Beck Westerns series. They're super fun. They're just rollicking classic Western stories that feature an Omaha Indian woman doctor in the 1890s Old West. The books are super short. They're novellas, and you can get those on any of your favorite retail outlets, or if you want to get them direct from me, you can go over to ChoctawSpirit.com and get the ebooks directly from me. I also have a few paperback books for those in the US if you're interested in that. But they are short, fast-paced reads and are great for enjoying during your downtime. All right, my friend, that is it for this week's episode of the Confident Fiction Author Podcast. Go out and enjoy some intentional downtime this week, and I will see you in next week's episode. Take care.